Thank you, Lauren, so much. And it's a great honor and privilege to be part of KYOTOGRAPHIE. It's so wonderful to be in the city and to have this beautiful dramatic space and the shipboard printing plant for the show. I want to thank Lucille Rebos and Yusuke Nakamichi and Lauren Hadler for the opportunity to be here. So today I'm going to share some of the work from Generation Wealth. It's a show and it's a book and now a film, which I'll show you a little piece of. And this project is really the culmination of a 25-year exploration through my photography and interviews and films. And over the last 6 years, I've been engaging in a process not just of making new work in the photography and video for the project, but most importantly, going back and analyzing and kind of doing an excavation in my own work, really thinking about what I've been witness to over the last 25 years, the themes I've been drawn to, and what it all means. This man owns the biggest limos in the world. And the important thing to clarify about this project is it's not about actual wealth. It's really about what I call the influence of affluence. It's about the pervasive aspiration to wealth and its connection to our identity and the American dream and the way that's packaged and exported and becomes part of this contagious virus that is the addictive cycle of consumerism. This is a mall where you can live at the mall, and they're doing yoga on the green in front, which functions as kind of the new town square. And my work considers wealth not just as money and kind of looking like you do, but also including the other things that give us value, the currency of fame, the currency of branding, the currency of the body, the currency of youth, the currency of sexuality, and of course, money and looking like you have it, this idea of fake it till you make it. The looking of it is almost as good as the having itself. And this is Brett Ratner, the film director, and the music mogul Russell Simmons in St. Bart's, where you have to have a lot of cash to have lunch. And in this work, I've really tried to track a shift in values from what the American dream used to signify, kind of hard work and frugality and discipline, to and kind of the idea of having a better life for your children, to the new American dream, more defined by bling and celebrity and narcissism. And to illustrate that, I have one of my old pictures from a project I did on the French aristocracy in 1987, where in this world of old money on the left, class wasn't defined by money, but that point proved a point of contrast for me in my world growing up in Los Angeles and the subjects that I came to photograph after that, where class was exclusively defined by money. And this is kind of a modern day princess, the wife of a media mogul in Toronto, in an Oscar de la Renta dress, in the home which she designed, and she says her style muse is a character named Truly Scrumptious from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And as I was putting this work together and contemplating the iconic elements that represent this sea change, I kept thinking about the recurring Birkin bag, which for anyone here who happily might not know is an Hermes designer bag that can be purchased for 5 figures, and how this was an oft-repeated reference from people from diverse subjects throughout the world. This is Suzanne, who you met before, and every orange box is a different Birkin bag, which she has in every color. And besides the surprising knowledge about a 5-digit bag, I also became obsessed by the fact that Kim Kardashian, who I first photographed here when she was 12 years old, became a mainstream star by starting with a sex tape. And more recently, I've also been fascinated by the gilded furniture and Corinthian columns that are the favorite aesthetic of the American president, who has redecorated the White House with gold drapes. And David Siegel from the Queen of Versailles will have to stand in for Donald Trump for reasons that you'll eventually understand. But while this work is not just about the Birkin bag, Kim Kardashian, or the rise of Donald Trump, it is most definitely about the culture that gave rise to all three. When the financial crash happened in 2008 and I was making The Queen of Versailles, I started to think that maybe the hundreds of stories I had photographed in my photography since the early 90s were connected, and that the crash turned them into a kind of morality tale. So before I tell you about what I discovered from this meta story about how we changed, I'll tell you a little bit about my own background and what brought me to this investigation. I studied photography and visual anthropology at Harvard. I actually traveled around the world one year to study film and anthropology, and was here in Kyoto and studying film for a few weeks in Tokyo with Shohei Imamura. And I began at National Geographic, and like so many photojournalists and anthropologists, was really focused on the other, on the exotic, and did my first project in a Maya Indian village in the highlands of Chiapas, Mexico. And while I was there, getting frustrated by access, it was a place where people did not want their photograph taken. It was a place where, as a woman, I had to learn the Maya language. And as I was kind of, I felt like once I was able to actually take a picture, it was a pretty superficial understanding of what I was seeing. And I started to think about the world that I had grown up in, which was in Los Angeles, and how that was the center of this popular culture that was being exported all over the world and influencing other youth cultures with shows like Beverly Hills 90210. And I started to think that maybe that culture was worthy of the same kind of in-depth look that photojournalists and anthropologists more often give to foreign cultures. So in 1992, I started investigating my own culture, and I began with my high school. This is the solemn ritual of graduation.
で、1992年から自分の文化、アメリカ文化を見つめ直すということを始めました。で、初めに、行ったのが自分の高校、卒業した高校の写真シリーズを撮り始めます。
And of course, the Nintendo makes it very dated, but on the other hand, it was also kind of prescient of what we would become, and now I think we would probably not be surprised by the kind of disrespectful act of taking out a phone in any solemn ritual. And I started looking at really how kids were influenced by the values of materialism, the cult of celebrity, and the importance of image. Many of the themes that just kind of accelerated exponentially over the last 25 years and drove me in the Generation Wealth Project. And this was Beverly Hills High Senior Ditch Day, and Mijanu in the foreground was voted best body at Beverly High. But in Mijanu's interview, she talked about how actually she wasn't rich and how hard it was to be in that world if you didn't have the cars and clothes that the other kids had, and yet she recognized that her beauty was a kind of passport to popularity. And the interviews are a really important component of the work, and unfortunately we couldn't put them in this show, but they're in the book. They kind of provide a counterpoint often to what's going on behind the surface of the image. And the story really became about how kids grow up quickly in the media-saturated environment. This was a 10-year-old who was living at a hotel, in a hotel suite that cost $3,000 a night after their mansions were seized because their father was indicted for IRS fraud. And this was a bar mitzvah party, the religious ritual for a 13-year-old Jewish boy, where the parents rented out a nightclub in LA to have the party and brought in go-go girls to dance with the kids. But even though this kid, Adam, in his interview said that he had to have a party like this and had to spend $50,000, he also said money ruins kids, and he felt that money ruined him. So that was very early in my career, but it just opened up this possibility for the interviews in terms of the subjects really becoming the informants and the truth tellers in the work, and that revelation that they could be so in it and affected by it and yet so observant and kind of the best social critics. So I ended up going through more than 500,000 pictures for this project with a curator, Trudy Wilner-Stack. And one of the things I discovered in the process was that these 25 years were not just the kind of things I had followed since the beginning of my career, but that they actually marked this kind of sea change in our culture. And there were a few touchstones that were important markers for me. And one was I saw this kind of straight line from the Reagan 80s to Donald Trump. And part of, and in terms of our admiration for the rich. And it kind of begins for me when Oliver Stone created this film Wall Street and created this character Gordon Gekko, who famously said greed is good. And he was supposed to be an anti-hero, but became a role model for a generation on Wall Street, including this hedge fund banker, Florian Home, who became one of the main characters in my film, who made $800 million and then was indicted for fraud and ended up doing jail time and was on the FBI's most wanted list and lost everything, including his family, his wife, his money, his freedom, and became a kind of truth teller for, in a way, the folly of the greed that he kind of personified. And this is Future the rapper, who said to me that it's really about faking it till you make it, and that's what he did. He threw money up in a club, wore incredible clothes even when he had nothing, and was one of the few lucky ones who was able to parlay that into fame and fortune and rap music. But one of the things that's, I think, is unique in American culture is that Americans don't really hate the rich because they always imagine that will be them someday. And one of the things that influenced me in this project is when you ask kids what they want to be when they grow up, they most often now say rich and famous. And unfortunately for the next generation, that's not a job.
このプロジェクトで子供に将来何になりたいですかということも聞いています。でそうすると多くの人が大体リッチで有名な人になりたいっていうんですね。残念ながらでもそういう仕事はないわけで、彼女たちがその大人になった時本当にどうなるのか。
If I show a film clip in English, will people understand?
Maybe, and I can help out.
Okay. I'm going to show you a short film clip from a short that I made called Kids and Money. And when I started photographing the kids in LA in the 90s, when the pictures were published, people were self-conscious, particularly parents, about looking excessive. However, by 2007, when I made this film, it was post-reality TV, and parents were kind of proudly saying that their daughter was like Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton.
今からキッズ&マニーという、短編の作品をお見せしたいと思います。これ、撮り始めた1990年代の時は、この子たちの、親御さんにあたる人たちがこれを例えば上映したら自分たちが成金って見られるんじゃないかとか批判されるんじゃないかって言って割と結構牽制する人が多かったんですけども、面白かったのは2007年に同じプロジェクトをした時にはそうやってちょっと牽制する人がほとんどいなくってどうぞどうぞうちのことって見せてください。でその間に何が起きたかっていうとリアリティ TV ショーですよねが出始めた前と後で富を見せるっていうことに対する人々のスタンスが大きく変わったと。
Okay, I'm going to try a clip in English. If nobody laughs, then I'll know.
I love fashion because I see it as like an art form, like it's just a way to look good and make you feel good and to say something about yourself. So, when you're meeting someone, they already know something about you from just what you're wearing. I mean, there's like a lot of different type of people, like fashion-wise at our school, like of course
in general.
Just but like I guess there's some people who don't really care that much, and you can kind of tell. It's true.
There are like just extreme amounts of money at our school, and
Fortune 500.
like trust fund, and so some of these people like really go overboard with the whole like everything. Sometimes I feel like it's more of a way of showing how much money you have than expressing itself through style.
Going to the things that are 4 digits, I think that's very inappropriate for school.
Yeah, for school.
It's not really necessary to spend a couple grand on something you're just wearing to go to class in. But if you want like a really nice classic bag, it's definitely appropriate to spend that kind of like 4 digits because that's something that's really nice.
簡単に言うと彼女たちは人は見た目でわかるからファッションは大事なのよ。
I don't think you need to translate the whole thing, but maybe just did they understand 4 digits that they're buying 4 digits bag? Maybe just explain that.
でなので、学校に行くときにはそれなりに服には気を使っていかなきゃいけなくて、でも、4桁だから10万以上の服を学校に着ていくのはダメと学校だからね。でもカバン、いいカバン、ナイスなカバンを持とうと思ったらやっぱりそれくらいしない出さないとダメよねっていうことを言っていました。16歳です。
But the tragic part of the story is really that the marketing of the consumer goods is not just to the rich, but that it goes across class, across race, across age, across border, and that has been a big part of my journey. And here you see a little bit of a cross-section, a teenager in San Francisco picking out something to wear from her messy room, a DJ in Las Vegas who's transformed his garage into a big shoe closet, the socialite you met before, Suzanne, who had 4 closets, but that wasn't big enough. So she made her wine cellar into a shoe closet. And then a kid in the suburbs of LA who has so many tennis shoes. His mother, he's Filipino, and his mother calls him Imelda Marcos. And these are rappers who play in a strip club in Atlanta who kind of explain the appeal of the designer goods in this kind of poor section of Atlanta. And one of the things that I was interested in is the backdrop for this work is really that we've never had less social mobility in the United States, and we've never had so much wealth concentrated in the hands of the few. So this idea of bling and fictitious social mobility is often the only social mobility people feel is in reach.
Poor people are the ones that spend the most money on $700 shoes, the ones that don't have it. It's about exclusivity. Can you call up and get you a pair of the fresh Giuseppe's, but do you get to go in the back of the Versace store and shop? It's all about status right now. It's the new doctor in front of your name.
So bling is the new doctor in front of your name. So one of the things that also happened over this 25 years was the rise of branding and kind of the link between branding and identity. And this is a socialite that I photographed in Hong Kong who had this tattoo that at first I thought was a religious symbol until she told me it was her favorite fashion brand, Chrome Hearts. And this was a picture of a showgirl in her dressing room in Las Vegas, and it really became a symbol for me about how girls take the pieces of the material world and kind of use them to make up their own identity, and also really spoke to the self-esteem crisis in girls, which was a big subject in my work, where she's written this note that says, I approve of myself, to give her confidence before a show. And one of the things that I've done a lot of work on girls, and in the context of Generation Wealth, girls became an amazing case study for me about how capitalism exploits insecurities and kind of makes people feel like they are not enough, and if they get this product, they will fix that problem only to find another problem. And of course, that doesn't just apply to girls, but that gave me insight into how that works, and I looked at it from a lot of different, basically everybody trying to be something other than they were, whether it was girls trying to, with body image, the poor trying to be rich, the old trying to be young. And the literal and metaphorical fall at a fashion show, Jason Wu in New York. And this is a 5-year-old shopping in her favorite store, and one of the effects that I looked at of this kind of exposure to media was the precocious sexualization of girls. And the idea of the princess and the industry about being a princess became a big idea for me, the kind of bill of goods that girls are sold about what they need to buy and also how they themselves are commodified. This is Disney's master at selling the idea of the princess, and you can get married as your favorite princess at Disney World. And really, girls ended up being a case study for the commodification of humans and kind of, if girls, I was really kind of obsessed with this idea of seeing that girls were learning from an early age that their value came from their body and what were the implications of that. And this is a little girl who won beauty pageants, and her mother decided that the best costume for the beauty pageant was a showgirl outfit, and she actually won the pageant. And her mother said she wasn't thinking about the connection to the Las Vegas showgirl or any sexual connotations, but I couldn't help seeing the comparison between this stripper that I had photographed in Vegas, also in a showgirl outfit, and also in a kind of a $2,000 outfit, of which she had many. But I'm often looking at extreme subcultures really to understand the mainstream. And the interesting thing for me was how these ideas of the stripper and the showgirl live in the minds of people who are not part of those worlds. And this is a class, an exercise class for soccer moms and teenagers who can learn how to dance like strippers. And this is a regular teenager in San Jose, but when I did her interview, she said if I could be anything, I would be a topless dancer, because I know if I can do that, I could do anything. So if girls learn that their value is in their body, the natural response is to leverage it, and that's the story that I'll show you next.
My name is Brooke Taylor. We are at the world famous Moonlight Bunny Ranch, and I am a legal prostitute, a professional.
Brooke Taylor is a college-educated girl from a nice middle-class Midwestern family who saw The Cat House on HBO and was like, that looks like a good life, I want that, and then went and did it.
I was a case manager for adults with developmental disabilities, and I was making, I think it was making like around $18,000-$20,000 a year. Pennies.
How does that compare with what you make here?
I'll make that in a day here. I try to study sales, because that's basically what my job is, a sales job. I'm going to pitch my idea to the CEO of a company, and I'm hoping that he'll invest in my products. We all have to work for a living. We're all using our bodies for something. It's just now when I get off work, my feet don't hurt. Other body parts do.
It's not the scarlet letter, it's the badge of honor. It's about the money you make and the lifestyle you have. This is her license plate. I earned it. So I'm also just want to make clear that I'm not judging, because I actually think this is Brooke's response is a rational response to a culture that values lifestyle and money, and is in a way a kind of post-moral world where somebody like Kim Kardashian can become a completely legitimized mainstream star by starting with a sex tape. So if the body is the source of value, you get a beauty pageant from cradle to grave, and this is a senior citizen in a beauty pageant. And this is her getting collagen, and I started looking at aging and kind of the draconian measures that we need to go to stay young and keep that value. This is a luxury recovery center after a facelift. And a lot of the stories came together for me in The Queen of Versailles, because Jackie Siegel was a beauty queen. Actually, she was an engineer first, who became a beauty queen when she realized that even though she was an engineer at a very prestigious school, her beauty, she thought, would get her further in her life than her engineering degree. So she married billionaire David Siegel, and together they tried to build the biggest house in America. But when they got hit by the crash and their home went into foreclosure, their story became an allegory for the overreaching of America. Their story really brought home to me the addictive nature of consumerism, because when a 26,000 square foot mansion is a starter home and you need to build a 90,000 square foot house, that was kind of the ultimate lesson of we're never satisfied. So I'm going to show you a clip from Queen of Versailles, but if you come today at 2:30, we're showing the whole movie, and that one actually has Japanese subtitles.
Oh, look at the dog, he's eating a cockroach.
I grew up in a one-bathroom, three-bedroom house, and I can remember I would have to wait in line to use the bathroom. In this house, we have, I think, 17 bathrooms. In our new house, we have 30 bathrooms. So you have to keep your legs crossed very long.
The reason why we really want the bigger home, for one thing, I think my husband deserves it. I think it'd be like a lifetime achievement. I think he's worked so hard. And even though this house, which is 26,000 square feet, is so big, we're bursting out at the seams.
I'm going to go look at our new house, okay? France and we saw Versailles, and we were inspired by the French architecture.
I drew it on the back of an envelope on my way to Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, we looked out our window and we kind of copied the top 3 floors of the Paris Hotel. Probably should have used smaller envelopes because it turned out to be the largest home in America.
We never sought out to build the biggest house in America. It's like kind of happened.
This is our grand ballroom. We have the grand staircase on each end.
It's the palace. Can you imagine like the dances and the parties?
I said, well, I'd like to have a bowling alley. Then he says, I want a health spot. And then I said, we need maids' quarters.
I forgot how many kitchens, 10 kitchens. We have a sushi bar.
2 tennis courts, 1 will be a stadium court.
But this is our ice skating / roller rink.
The children have their own wing. They have a playroom with a stage where they can perform and do their little whatever they do.
Okay, this is the staircase that I would come up if I was going to visit the children.
We wanted to put everything that we could dream of in this home.
That's our observation deck. Every night we go up there to watch the Disney fireworks.
So by the time we both got what we wanted, now it's 90,000 square feet.
Jackie, it's your room.
No, that's not my room.
Where's your room?
That's my closet.
No way. No way.
I gotta go kiss my dog. My husband knew how special Chanel was to me, so he had her stuffed for me. And now she's upstairs. And this one, a staff member ran over in the driveway, but now he's on my piano.
So you asked me why I'm building the largest home in America, and my answer is because I could.
You mentioned being a kingmaker and having a big role in the 2000 election.
I sure did. I got George W. elected president. Personally got him elected president.
It is nice to be here with so many good folks from the great state of Florida.
Had I not stuck my big nose into it, there probably wouldn't have been an Iraqi war, and maybe we might have been better off. I don't know.
How were you personally responsible for the re-election of George?
I'd rather not say it because it may not necessarily have been legal.
So this filtering down of luxury and also the desire for more and borrowing more and then the consequences, that's what I saw happened through so many different places during the crash. And this typology of the brown pool and the abandoned home and the living too large, I saw from California to Florida to Dubai to Europe, Iceland, Ireland. And so that, in a way, brought together this project for me. And one of the big things that happened over these 25 years is that Americans used to compare themselves to their neighbors and want kind of what the neighbor had who had a little bit more than they did, the idea of keeping up with the Joneses. And as people started spending more time with the people they knew on TV than their actual neighbors, they wanted what they had. So keeping up with the Joneses literally became keeping up with the Kardashians. And this was a family that borrowed against the value of their house, had a very kind of middle-class house, but built a resort-style pool inspired by what they saw on a brochure for Maui in the back of their house.
でこの人たちは中流階級のいわゆる普通のサラリーマン家庭なんですけど、どっかの雑誌で見たそのマリブの、プールに憧れて家の中にそれを建てちゃった。
So in a way, the cheap credit from the boom was the ultimate fake it until you make it. And this was in an area they ended up calling Foreclosure City, where more than a third of the homes ended up like this. And here we see California, Ireland, Dubai, and Iceland. And I'm going to skip over Dubai here, but I'll just say that this was kind of the ultimate mirage. In Dubai, they tried to build the world islands, a replica of all the continents, and an Irish developer bought the island of Ireland for $37 million. The islands did not have any infrastructure, no water, no electricity, no sewage. And 3 months after the financial crash, the developer that bought this committed suicide. But in Iceland, there were lessons learned. This was a fisherman who became a banker because everybody during the boom went into finance. And then after the crash, lost his job and went back to being a fisherman and found that he loved that much more, and that he realized that he had to go back to what really mattered in life, spending more time with his family and getting back to the fish, which was the original source of wealth in Iceland. And in Iceland, it did seem like there were lessons learned because they completely crashed and were not able to be bailed out. And many people went back to knitting, which was a traditional pastime, leaving behind the kind of foreign designer clothes and doing something that not only was handmade, but going back to community. And they felt like they had lost their moral compass, and so after the crash, made changes. But I think the question for me in the work was, was our learning and our insights limited to the period of suffering, or would it be really sustained change? But in some ways, the genie was out of the bottle, and one of the examples of that is I looked at from 2000, the new rich in China, and focused on China and Russia as two places where, in a post-communist world where revolutions had leveled class and inequality, there was a kind of even more mad and frantic grab for status and luxury. This is a CEO who has all Versace furniture and a solid gold toilet where people travel from mainland China to be photographed on the toilet. And a billionaire outside of Shanghai who built a full-scale replica of the White House. And from his office, he has a view of Mount Rushmore. And I photographed, and there was this desire to learn how to be rich. So when I first started shooting in China, people just wanted designer bags and these kind of obvious items. But by the time I was back in 2016, they also wanted to learn the proper pronunciation of foreign brands. They wanted to learn how to be rich. So this is from an etiquette class where you can learn how to pronounce foreign brands and many other things. I'll show you an example.
记得不要把你的嘴带到碟子，要把就跟因为我们中式呢，我们就会比较什么低一点的 欧式不能 How to eat a banana elegantly with a knife and fork. 然后呢，这些这个问题。
And the $16,000 that it costs to take this course, is that a lot for the clients?
Everybody who's taken the class has said it's worth every penny spent.
So thank you for letting me go a few minutes late. I'm going to end with a clip, the trailer which just came out for the new film Generation Wealth. And after I did the book and the show, I still, of course, looking for more and more like the subjects, did not feel like I was done with the project and made a feature-length film so I could look at it historically and also personally, and it became a personal film. And it'll come out this summer, and I think in Japan it'll be available streaming by November, but I'm going to show you a short clip.
If I want to work 100 hours a week and never see my family and die at an early age, that's my prerogative.
I would have money as big as this one, encase it.
33 pounds of gold and diamonds given to me by superstars of the world. I love money. Come to me.
I've been a photographer for 25 years, with my lens focused on wealth. I noticed that no matter how much people had, they still want more. I want to figure out why our obsession with wealth has grown. It seemed to be a shift in the American dream.
I know the names of the Kardashians better than I know the names of my neighbors.
This fictitious lifestyle fuels this sense of inadequacy.
I have the classic Birkin in almost every color.
The bags start 20,000, go up.
I realized wealth was much more than money. It was whatever gave us value. Fame, sex, even plastic surgery for dogs.
It's kind of like the end of Rome. Societies accrue their greatest wealth at the moment that they face death.
If you look great and you have a nice car, I'm all for it. But at the expense of what?
You sell your soul to the devil.
You're so hungry for it, you're blinded.
I am on the FBI most wanted list. All of us are following the toxic dream. If you think that money will buy you anything and everything, you've never